€60 billion. That is the minimum figure Uisce Éireann, Ireland's national water utility, says it needs just to fix the problems it already knows about. Not future problems, not climate adaptation, not the housing growth targets, just the known, documented, existing failures in the pipes beneath your feet. €60 billion, and the work will not be finished until 2050. There is a second number buried underneath that one. In 2016, the Irish state suspended domestic water charges, following one of the largest protest movements this country had seen since independence. 80,000 people on O'Connell Street, a non-payment campaign that brought compliance rates below 50%, a political system that blinked. The charges were suspended and then, in April of 2017, abolished entirely by a Dáil vote of 96 to 48. Domestic water has been funded from general taxation ever since. That decision is now a bill. And here's the part nobody is talking about. The bill has not gone away. It has simply been renamed. It is now called Infrastructure Deficit, and it is sitting in the pipes under Cork and Dublin and Galway and every county town in between. Before we go any further, a quick one. Drop the city you are watching from in the comments and tell me whether you are on a short break or settling in. I have been genuinely curious about who watches this channel and from where. Right, back to the pipes. Because here is where the story takes a turn. The government that abolished water charges did so under enormous public pressure. Fair enough. The pressure was real, and the political system responded to it. But when the charges were suspended, the infrastructure that those charges were meant to fund did not suspend with them. The pipes still aged. The treatment plants still degraded. The demand from a growing population still climbed. And the investment gap, the distance between what was needed and what was being spent, kept widening year after year in silence. By the time Uisce Éireann's own chief executive, Neil Gleeson, sat before an Oireachtas committee and put a figure on it, the number had become almost impossible to absorb. €60 billion to address the known issues. 2050 as the target date. Not aspirational, not a stretch goal, a minimum. And even reaching that minimum requires the state to consistently fund Uisce Éireann at levels it has never historically sustained. The system worked exactly as designed. Nobody lied. Nobody broke a rule. The water charges were politically toxic, and they were removed. What was not removed was the physical reality of aging infrastructure that now covers over 90,000 kilometres of pipes across the island, much of it laid in the 1920s and never replaced. Now look at what that gap between aspiration and reality actually means on the ground. In Cork, residents on the north side of the city have been dealing with brown and orange water from their taps for close to 3 years. Not once, not occasionally, persistently. The cause, confirmed by Uisce Éireann itself, is old cast iron pipes, approximately 600 kilometres of them in Cork City alone, 50 to 60% of which are over 100 years old. When repair or upgrade work disturbs the sediment built up over a century inside those pipes, it enters the supply. The water coming out of the tap is the color of rust. Uisce Éireann's own estimate for replacing those pipes in Cork City is approximately €500 million, spread across several investment cycles. €500 million. For one city. For one problem. And the company cannot start that work immediately because it does not have guaranteed long-term funding. It has annual budget allocations, a line in each year's budget day announcement, with no multi-year certainty for its supply chain partners to plan around. A People Before Profit TD raised it in the Dáil. Residents described spending €20 a week on bottled water, €1,000 a year, because they would not put what was coming out of the tap into a glass. And Uisce Éireann's response to the committee was, in essence, the water leaving the treatment plant complies with standards. The problem is the pipes between the plant and your kitchen. Which is, technically, accurate. Which is, technically, the problem. That was the surface. Now let us look at what is underneath. Ireland is not the only country in Europe that has wrestled with the politics of water charges. But it is almost certainly the only country in Europe that abolished them watched the infrastructure deficit grow for a decade, and is now confronting a €60 billion repair bill, while simultaneously trying to build 300,000 new homes on a network that cannot reliably supply the ones already there. In Brussels, the European Commission has consistently argued that Ireland needs cost-reflective water pricing. The OECD made the same call as recently as 2021. The Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, the Drinking Water Directive, and the Water Framework Directive all apply to Ireland, and Uisce Éireann's compliance obligations under those directives are part of what is driving the €12.2 billion investment program. The pressure from Brussels on water infrastructure is structural, ongoing, and not going away. The water crisis in Cork is not an isolated failure. It is a symptom of a structural problem that runs the length of the country, and the most acute expression of that problem is in Dublin. Water supply in the Eastern and Midlands region, Greater Dublin, Meath, Kildare, Wicklow, currently relies on a single primary source. 1.7 million people, one source. Uisce Éireann's own infrastructure delivery director, Maria O'Dwyer, told an Oireachtas committee that this over-reliance is, quote, zero demand in the Greater Dublin area is projected to rise by 34% by 2044. The existing supply infrastructure cannot meet that demand. The proposed solution is the largest water infrastructure project in Irish history, a 170-kilometre pipeline from the River Shannon at Partine Basin in County Tipperary, treated near Birdhill, then conveyed across Offaly and Kildare to a terminal reservoir at Peamount in County Dublin. The estimated cost is between €4.58 billion and €5.96 billion. Construction cannot begin until 2028, subject to planning approval. Completion is projected 5 years after that, meaning the mid-2030s at the earliest. This project was first proposed over a decade ago. The planning application was submitted in January of 2026. It is now with An Comisiún Pleanála. Clare County Council and Tipperary County Council have already signalled opposition. A project described as critical to Dublin's housing delivery, 300,000 new homes by 2030 is the government's own target, cannot begin for at least 2 more years and will not deliver water for the best part of a decade. 30% of treated water in Dublin is currently lost through leaks before it reaches a tap. 30%. Uisce Éireann has committed €420 million over 5 years to leak reduction in the eastern region. But leak reduction alone will not solve a supply deficit driven by population growth. Both problems need to be fixed simultaneously, with multi-billion euro programs running in parallel, in a company that is funded year by year, cannot offer long-term contracts to its supply chain, and is currently waiting to hear whether its request for an additional €2 billion on top of its already approved program will be approved. Here is what an actual civil servant looking at this file would see. A utility that knows precisely what it needs to do. A utility that has the technical plans, the engineering expertise, and the modeled cost estimates. A utility that cannot execute those plans at the required pace because the funding model underneath them is structurally misaligned with the timescales involved. Major water infrastructure projects take 5 to 7 years for a straightforward capital project, 7 to 10 for complex ones, and more than a decade for the most complex. Annual budget allocations are a tool designed for annual problems. They are not designed for a €60 billion, 25-year infrastructure deficit. If this kind of breakdown is what has been missing from your feed, you know what to do. Now, back to the numbers. Uisce Éireann's approved investment program for 2025 to 2029 is €10.2 billion. The government confirmed an additional €1.7 billion for high growth areas, bringing the combined total to €12.2 billion. That sounds significant. Against a €60 billion baseline need, it covers roughly 1/5 of the known deficit over a 5-year window. The arithmetic says this country is spending at a pace that will not close the gap within any politically relevant time frame. And here is the second dimension of the problem. The housing crisis and the water crisis are not separate emergencies. They are the same emergency, viewed from different angles. Uisce Éireann warned the government last year that it faces severe difficulties providing the water and wastewater connections needed for the 300,000 new homes the coalition wants built by 2030. The Construction Industry Federation put it plainly. When developers try to get a connection agreement from the utility, the delays are significant. Not because of planning, not because of labor, because the pipes are not there. The capacity is not there. Homes cannot be built where the water infrastructure does not exist to serve them, and the water infrastructure cannot be built fast enough on a year-to-year funding cycle. This is what the foundation cracking looks like in practice. Not a single dramatic collapse, a slow, compound failure, where one underinvestment feeds the next, where one delayed project pushes back housing delivery, where housing delay drives prices higher, where higher prices push workers out of the cities that need them. The foundation has been cracking for 60 to 100 years, by Uisce Éireann's own reckoning. The crack is now structural. But all of that is still abstract. Here is what it actually means for the household paying the bill. You do not pay a water charge in Ireland. That was settled, loudly and definitively, in 2017, when the Dáil formally abolished the billing regime and the government began refunding the payments that had been made. But you do pay for water. You have always paid for water. You pay for it through general taxation. And what you are paying for right now, through your income tax, your USC, your VAT, is a service that in parts of Cork delivers brown liquid from the tap, that in Dublin draws from a single source for 1.7 million people, that has a known repair bill of 60 billion euro spread over 25 years, and that is currently funded at a pace that will not meet that bill on time. This year, the state is providing 1.7 billion euro to Uisce Éireann to cover the cost of domestic water services. 1.7 billion euro of public money transferred to the utility in a single year with no charge to the household. That is the model. The question that follows from it, and it is an uncomfortable one, is whether that model is actually delivering the infrastructure that 1.7 billion per year is supposed to buy. The answer, from the utility's own testimony before the Oireachtas, is no. Not because the money is being wasted, not because of corruption or mismanagement, but because the scale of the deficit is so large and the funding cycle so misaligned with the investment horizon that the money is being absorbed faster than it can repair the gap. Every time Storm Éireann, or a storm like it, knocks out water supply to tens of thousands of households, the same conversation happens. Uisce Éireann is buying backup generators, 100 new ones, with 200 more to follow, specifically because treatment plants across the country lack the resilience to maintain services when the grid fails. Generator procurement is not a long-term infrastructure strategy. It is a patch on a patch. There is a version of this story told inside Leinster House. It emphasises record investment, 12.2 billion over 5 years, a record capital allocation, a project pipeline that stretches to the mid-2030s. And that version is accurate. The investment is real. The direction is right. But it is also incomplete. Because the version told inside the utility itself, in Oireachtas committee testimony, in CEO interviews, in planning applications, is a version where the known deficit still outpaces the current spend, where the critical Shannon pipeline cannot deliver water for close to a decade, and where the cast iron pipes under Cork City will still be there, carrying sediment into people's taps, until someone finds the €500 million to replace them. The clock started in the mid-1990s, when domestic water charges were first abolished. It started again in 2017, when they were formally scrapped for the second time. Between those two moments, a principle was established. Water is a human right, and it will be funded by the state, not by the household. That principle has not changed. What has changed is the size of the bill it generates, and the gap between what the state is currently paying and what the infrastructure actually requires. The next meaningful decision point is the budget in October of 2026. That is where Uisce Éireann's request for an additional €2 billion above its existing program will either be approved or deferred. After that, the Shannon pipeline planning decision. After that, construction mobilization, if it is approved. Each stage is a door. Each door has a timeline. And the timeline for delivering water security to 1.7 million people in Dublin and the Midlands runs well into the next decade, even if every decision goes correctly from here. The question worth sitting with is this. Ireland abolished water charges because the public said the cost was too high. 60 billion euro later, the cost is now unavoidable. It is just no longer appearing on a bill with your name on it. It is appearing in the pipes, in the brown water, in the housing estates that cannot be connected, in the annual budget lines that are real but not large enough, in the infrastructure that is being fixed, slowly, carefully, with genuine intent, at a pace that the deficit has already outrun. The pipes do not care about the politics. They only care about the water flowing through them.